On a freezing night in February 1959, something happened on the slopes of Kholat Shakal. 9 experienced hikers abandoned the only shelter they had. Their tent had been cut open from the inside. Outside, a single line of footprints disappeared into the frozen darkness. By sunrise, their fate had already been sealed. When search teams finally reached the campsite, nothing about the scene made sense. The tent had been cut from the inside. Footprints led away into the frozen night. Every new discovery answered one question and created 2 more. More than 60 years later, the evidence remains, but the truth may still be buried beneath the snow. The expedition was led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, an experienced mountaineer and engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. Joining him were 8 companions, fellow students, and experienced outdoor enthusiasts. Together, they had completed demanding winter expeditions before. This journey was considered difficult. But well within their abilities. They carried everything needed to survive deep in the wilderness: food, medical supplies, navigation equipment, cold weather clothing, cameras, and detailed journals that would later help investigators reconstruct their final days. Not long after the expedition began, one member of the group, Yuri Yudin, developed severe pain caused by illness and injuries. Unable to continue, he made the painful decision to turn back. He watched his friends disappear into the mountains. As the expedition moved deeper into the northern Urals, the hikers continued documenting their journey with remarkable detail. They photographed the landscape, recorded weather conditions, and filled their journals with observations, jokes, and daily routines. Nothing in those entries suggested fear. Nothing hinted that the expedition was in serious trouble. By February 1st, deteriorating weather and poor visibility forced the group onto the exposed eastern slope of Kholat Shakal. Instead of descending into the protection of the nearby forest, they chose to establish camp on the mountainside. It was a decision that investigators would debate for decades. As darkness fell, someone in the group took one final photograph. It would become the last known image of the expedition. Sometime during that night, everything changed. As daylight faded, the expedition settled in for the night. After another long day crossing the frozen wilderness, the tent became their only refuge from the relentless mountain wind. They prepared a simple meal, one final journal entry recorded the day's progress, unaware it would become part of one of history's greatest mysteries. Outside, the wind continued to sweep across the barren slopes of Kolatsiaho. Inside the tent, boots were lined neatly near the entrance. Equipment was carefully organized. What happened during the next few moments has never been fully explained. Investigators immediately realized something was terribly wrong. The tent had not collapsed. It had not been destroyed by an avalanche. It was still standing. But one detail changed everything. The canvas had been cut open from the inside. Inside the tent, they found winter clothing, heavy boots, food, cameras, journals, everything needed to survive. Outside, a single trail of footprints led away from the camp. Some appeared to have been made by people wearing boots, others only socks, and some bare feet. Who or what could have convinced 9 experienced hikers to leave their shelter without the equipment that might have saved their lives? The first 2 victims were discovered beneath a towering cedar tree at the edge of the forest. Nearby, investigators found the remains of a small fire. The evidence suggested the hikers had tried to stay alive after leaving the tent. High above them, several branches had been broken. Some investigators believed one or more members of the group had climbed the tree, possibly searching for the tent or watching for danger. Following the line back toward the campsite, search teams discovered Igor Dyatlov, then Zinaida Kolmogorova, and finally Rustem Slobodin. All appeared to have been moving toward the tent, as though they had been trying to return. 5 members of the expedition had now been found. 4 were still missing. Nearly 3 months after the first discoveries, the remaining 4 members of the expedition were finally located beneath deep snow in a nearby ravine. Unlike the first victims, several of these hikers had suffered devastating internal injuries. Medical examiners documented multiple fractured ribs and severe skull trauma. Yet in several cases, the external injuries appeared surprisingly limited. Some reports also documented the loss of soft tissue, including the tongue of one victim and eye tissue in some of the bodies. Modern forensic experts generally attribute many of these changes to natural decomposition, scavenging animals, and the environment after months beneath snow and running water. Investigators also detected elevated levels of radioactive contamination on some items of clothing. Whether those findings were connected to the deaths or entirely unrelated has remained a subject of debate for decades. For months, Soviet investigators interviewed witnesses, examined the evidence, and attempted to reconstruct the expedition's final hours. Every discovery seemed to answer one question, while raising another. Why had the hikers abandoned a perfectly usable tent? Why were some attempting to return? What caused the severe internal injuries? And why did some items of clothing show elevated levels of radioactive contamination? Despite the investigation, many of those questions remained unanswered. When the official report was completed, the deaths were attributed to a compelling natural force. The report never explained exactly what that force was. Soon afterward, the case was archived. For decades, the mystery remained largely hidden from public view. Over the decades, scientists, mountaineers, forensic specialists, and historians have proposed many explanations. Some answer part of the mystery. None answers every question. Recent computer simulations suggest that a delayed slab avalanche may have struck the campsite. It could explain why the hikers quickly cut through the tent and why several victims suffered severe chest injuries. But critics point out that the tent remained largely standing. The footprints were still visible, and rescuers reported no obvious avalanche debris. Another theory suggests violent katabatic winds created unbearable conditions. However, the evidence does not clearly explain the fatal injuries or why they never made it back. Some researchers have proposed that secret military testing took place nearby. Parachute mines or other classified weapons have been suggested. Supporters point to reported lights in the sky and the radioactive clothing. Yet, no direct evidence has ever confirmed military involvement. Another hypothesis suggests that unusual wind patterns created low-frequency sound waves known as infrasound. Some scientists believe prolonged exposure could trigger extreme anxiety or an overwhelming urge to escape. Every major explanation answers some of the evidence while leaving other questions unresolved. Perhaps the tragedy resulted from a combination of natural forces, human decisions, and extraordinary circumstances. Or perhaps some part of that night will never be fully understood. More than 6 decades have passed since 9 experienced hikers entered these mountains and never returned. Advances in forensic science, modern computer simulations, and decades of research have brought us closer to understanding what may have happened. Yet no single explanation accounts for every piece of evidence. Perhaps the answer was never one mystery, but several: a mountain, a storm, human decisions made under impossible conditions, and a chain of events that no one survived to describe. Today, the wind still crosses Kolachiakal. The snow still buries old tracks, and the mountain keeps its secret.